Welcome to the Mindset Connection podcast, where we showcase everyday changemakers who are doing extraordinary things in the field of mental health and wellness. We are your hosts, Jennifer Clearwaters and Cindy O'Connell, and thank you for tuning in for our 19th episode. We are ticking them off every week, and today we are welcoming our friend and wellness coach, Gerald Saluti, to the podcast. Long time in the making, so thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about Jerry. So he's a seasoned health and wellness practitioner. He specializes in human performance, functional movement, and holistic well-being. His background is rooted in athletics, and he's a competitive cyclist, rock climber, not at this moment, but he's getting back, and an advanced yoga practitioner. He has built a career centered on guiding individuals to achieve optimum health, mobility, and vitality. He holds advanced certifications in personal training, yoga, functional breathwork, myofascial release, and sports nutrition. Besides his professional teaching and training, he's also served as the executive director of the Newark Yoga Movement, teaching yoga classes in the Newark public school system for 2 years. He also partnered with the New Jersey Department of Juvenile Justice to lead multiple yoga breathwork and meditation sessions for at-risk youth on probation. His clients range from professional athletes to college sports teams to individuals to yoga teacher training to nonprofit organizations. He is committed to tailoring evidence-based practices of movement, stress, breathwork, meditation, and recovery. So welcome, Jerry, our friend and fellow yoga teacher.
Thanks for having me. Thank you so much for having me. It's super uncomfortable to hear someone talk about you in that way.
Everybody says that.
I don't know. As humans, I think we're very, very hard on ourselves. At least I am. I'm going to talk about myself. I'm super hard on myself. I have a high standard for what I think I should achieve and not achieve in my life. And to hear you say a bunch of things that you just said, first of all, the one that gets me the most is advanced yoga practitioner. I don't even know what that means anymore. And I think I'm much more than that as a yogi now, based on the last 6 months of my life. I think that could not be a more elegant statement of kind of what I'm trying to accomplish here with my life.
And that's perfect, because that's actually where we want to start with you.
Yes.
It's like how...
Sure.
We both, obviously, you and Cindy have known each other, and you were practicing yoga, and you were my teacher for teacher training. And I remember when I had to go to do this yoga training that I didn't want to go to, Cindy actually sent me a flyer and said, "You're going to this one."
I did.
Jen, did you do yours at Inlet or at
Yoga Peace School?
Yoga Peace School.
Yep.
That's what I thought. You were like our first.
Yep.
I think Jennifer went through our first. My wife and I, Yalati is my wife's name. Our first teacher training that we offered down at the, I call it the beach, but it's no longer the beach.
The shore
where my
in
home
Jersey.
is.
It's the
shore.
shore.
It's Central Jersey. I never
That's
knew.
where she sent the flyer and was just like, "I found the training for you. You're going to go to that one because
Yeah.
you're going to take classes with him."
I got to tell you, there was something magical about the first time. So I didn't want to be a yogi. I was called to be a yogi. I have my wife. So for those of you that don't know me or know anything about me, I got married 22 years ago to the world's greatest human being. We had, I like to tell people, 2 wonderful weeks of marriage, and she got sick, and she got her first colon rectal tumor. She's had, I want to say, 29 surgeries over the course of my marriage. She lives with a permanent ostomy, and when she got sick, I was still a lawyer. So I was, back in the day, I was a lawyer. You couldn't be both. It was impossible to take care of my wife and take care of business. Eventually, I got kicked out of the law, and I landed in the yoga world, putting together what turned out to be a base of the most important information I was ever going to be given. And then it became my life's work.
How did you get there, though? Like, how did you go from taking care of Yulati to go like, oh,
It's interesting.
I'm going to be a yoga teacher.
I'm just going to go to yoga, and now I'm going to be, now knowing you, I can see you going, I'm taking a class. No, I'm going to be the best teacher ever. But how did you pick yoga?
So maybe like a year before Yulati got sick, I had been introduced to yoga as a recovery tool for an injury that I'd gotten. And I had gone like to 2 hot yoga classes. And when Yulati got sick, I thought, and it was told to me by many of the doctors, that yoga is something she should think about. And at the time, this is years ago now. And at the time, it wasn't as popular
No.
in
No, it was
society
not.
as it is
No.
now.
No.
You know, and when I was growing up, we had Channel 13. You know, you had to get up off the sofa and change the
Click.
channel.
Yeah.
And on Saturday mornings, there was like that Channel 13 yoga woman.
Yeah.
You remember her? She was in like a leotard, and I was like, that's not going to help me. Like, that's what I thought it
Too
was.
slow. Too slow.
And the reality of it turns out, yoga's three things. The word itself, what does it mean? It means union, yoking of three things: mind, body, spirit. Not bad, right? Those are three like really important things that I kind of need to help her here. And much like my own illness went recently, it was like almost like a microcosm of what happened to my wife, but it took 21 years. So in 21 years, and to have 29 surgeries, that means you've had at least 100 visits to the hospital, like,
at
because
least.
everyone doesn't result in a surgery. So it was just every time something went, we thought everything was going to be okay or was going right. With Yolati, it went wrong, and that's what happened to me in the hospital. So I went in with the flu in January. By February 1st, I went in January 22nd. By February 1st, double pneumonia. And it's just every single time something happened to me in the hospital, it was negative for the first, 45 days. And it was like the same kind of events that happened to her. Every time we thought we were somewhere, the rug got pulled out.
And this is why we're doing this in June.
Yes.
Jerry's supposed to come on with us in February.
February.
I was a tad busy in February.
Yeah.
I was dying in a hospital bed.
We still want you to go back, though, because we do want to talk about this, but we want you to go back. Was there one separate thing that said,
So I'm
going to be a yoga teacher?
I'm getting there.
All right.
So as I was kind of learning what yoga was, a studio opened up in our hometown, and it was a hot yoga studio. And I had done 2 Bikram classes. So Bikram is a very different kind of hot yoga than they were teaching at the time. It's a set number of sequences. It's 27 or 26 sequences in a row. Very different from what I stepped into when I went back to yoga in town. It was a vinyasa yoga class. And as soon as I stepped into that class, I was like, ooh, wait a minute, this is different. This is hitting in a different place. It's not only it's different, it's calling me. So now I'm called, right? And you know you're in the right place when you get to a point in the studio that I was in Chatham. And like for a year, I want to say for a year before let's say for 6 months before she got sick. And when I say we were married 2 weeks, we were together 3 months before that. So we were already starting to do some yoga. She wasn't sick yet. Okay. And what happened to me was, you're right, Jen. Nothing's ever good enough for me. So if you tell me you're a yoga teacher, I'm going to study everything there is to know about what you do, because I'm now committed to this. It's something that's made me feel better. It's clearly helpful, mind, body, spirit. I need help in all 3 arenas. I'm super stressed out from my old career. Spiritually, I was raised Catholic. I kind of strayed from the Catholic Church. It's not to say I don't believe in God. I'm not a very spiritual person, but at that point in time, I wasn't. And I went seeking more. And that led me to California. So it became very evident to me that the people in New Jersey, in this studio in particular, no offense to New Jersey Yoga at the time, they just weren't up to speed where some of the people in California had taken the yoga movement to a whole nother level. Mind you, plenty of people were doing Ashtanga yoga that could do the things that people were doing that I was looking at. This is when social media started to become like a little bit more relevant. And it was very evident to me right away that there was something else here that they weren't teaching. So what we did is this. She went to India. I went to California. She studied in India for a while and brought back what they had. I went to California, and what she learned in India was much more, I would call it classic yoga. What I learned in California was much more movement-based. So we married the 2 things into a system of movement when she came back. So I went out and learned from much different teachers. So I had plateaued in my practice really quickly, physically, as to what I could do. And I was super unsatisfied right away because I loved it, how I felt when I did yoga.
You needed more.
Yeah, I needed much more.
You needed more.
And I found it. I found these incredible teachers in California became my mentors, a lot younger guys than me, but 10, 15 years younger than me, but I never looked at it like that. I always treated my body as,
I can do it.
Yeah,
of course. I never ever
Just
said anything
do
but
it.
I can do it.
Do hard things.
Well, that didn't come up. Do hard things. That's something, that's a motto now I live my life by. That didn't come into play for us as a family until a couple of years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. What we skated by with on our first, let's say 10 or 12 years of getting my wife to be able to live her life in any kind of positive fashion, it was different. And to get to where you come to a point where you can say, all right, I'm going to walk away from my career. I'm going to just ensconce myself in this lifestyle, and I'm going to see what happens.
Yeah.
I'm going to have no regard for where I'm going to be money wise. So we lived in Chatham in a big house. We had massive money and cars and stuff. And it wasn't anywhere near what we wanted or needed. So we sold all our things and we moved from Chatham to Belmar. We rented a little house in Belmar, and we started, because my parents lived down here. And it was really clear to me that, look, we're not going to make as much money teaching yoga as we were being a criminal lawyer. So we're going to have to change our lifestyle, which we were perfectly ready to do anyway.
You were ready.
Yeah, you're just ready to do it anyway. So the reason yoga's interesting to me, like I found yoga, but I didn't find what I wanted. So I had to go looking for more. So yeah, the idea was there. And this happens to us in life, right?
Yeah.
I need a new car. What does that mean? Well, I got to start doing some research on what that means.
Right.
You know, what's my spending point? There's 79 other questions that come after that. There's an infinite number after yoga. So I could have went in a million different directions, and it did. My career in yoga now has taken me, and wellness has taken me from finding out what's going to help my wife's illness and her recovery to, you know, the first real gig I got was I had been training a bunch of athletes. Some of them were pro athletes, some of them were college level athletes. And it became really clear to me that college kids had that perfect kind of precipice for me to push them off of. So you go to college, right? And they're athletes in lacrosse. Men's lacrosse was the first place they put me. And what an obnoxious bunch of children that I walked into that 15 years ago in the locker room at Rutgers. Now, after, you know, men's lacrosse, women's lacrosse, just team after team comes on board. Yeah, because my first year at Rutgers men's lacrosse, I only had one team. And the reason I got the gig was one of my personal athletes was going to college. I had been teaching the kid since he's like eighth grade. Broke his wrist, and he was the best player in the country. And the parents said, we're not bringing Jerry unless he starts a program of yoga and bodyweight training for Rutgers University. So that's what happened. I was part of his package.
Right.
And they started to pay me to come up to Rutgers. So I got involved. I got, a press pass, and I was able to go into all the different football, baseball, basketball, and I got to assess all these athletes. And it was evident to me, team by team by team, I could add value 100%. And the first year I did the Rutgers men's lacrosse, from year 0, where I wasn't entertaining yoga with them, to year 1, they went from, let's say, they cut down their soft tissue injuries by 75%. As a team, can you imagine? Like 75%. Yes. So all their players are getting to play. Yep. So guess what happened from the first year when they stunk as a team. Now the year I come, no difference in the student body. They have a bunch of freshmen studs. Mine's a freshman stud who's not playing, which is pretty normal for freshmen. But as we kind of opened up Rutgers as a really good jumping off place to see if test systems, to see what people like in that precipice that are really, really in a point where they're like me, they've come to like know their bodies a little bit. Hey, I've been an athlete in high school my whole life. Hey, I'm now with a bunch of guys that are just as good as me. What can I do to separate myself? And what happened was, when I walked into the locker room, the older kids didn't like me. The younger kids had no choice. So there was a bunch of young freshmen that year, and they bought me hook, line, and sinker. So not only did I decrease soft tissue by 75%, but the meat of the team, these really good recruits that they got, they bought into it.
They were receptive.
So tell us how you actually, so what did you do? You did a
3
yoga
times
session.
a week.
Okay.
3
for
times
20
a week
minutes
for an hour.
For an hour. Before practice, after practice?
After practice.
After practice.
Yep,
yeah,
the
which is
muscles are
probably
open,
exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So and then that turned out, Cindy, now you get involved with the team, right? So the
Right.
question is, what's the pregame workout look like? So now I'm going pregame. So now I'm going to the
See,
games and I'm warming
That's
them
why
up.
I asked that
Yes,
question
yeah.
because
So now they have a pregame stretch. Now they have a postgame stretch. So and then as soon as that happens, you're a year into it. So you go from 0 to 75% less soft tissue in year 1. Now in year 2, you have women's lacrosse, women's field hockey, men's pitchers.
Yeah.
Now you have now I'm breaking down movement patterns, not just for lacrosse, which is okay. They cut on a dime, so they're going to have knee stuff. They're playing on turf. So what do I do about X, Y, and Z? That's different than a pitcher,
yes,
and it's different than a field hockey player. Stop, start, stop. So each team that I got I had to learn a new pattern of movement, which is right up my alley, and I'm loving that. I loved it. And then exponentially, I went from 0 to 3, 0 to 1 team, 3 teams. Not year 3, it's like holy crap.
Now
I
you're
have.
super stretched thin.
I'm stretched too
and
thin.
driving up to
Jennifer.
Rutgers
9
is
people,
not
9
easy.
No,
Nine
no.
teams
Not
is
easy.
too much, and trying to take care of
And
your
I'm going
family.
to tell you, like, real honestly, as
Too
a
much.
new practitioner, you're living hand to mouth.
Right.
You're living paycheck to
Yeah.
paycheck.
No
So you
question.
say
I don't
yes,
think
you say
I don't-
yes.
You're
you don't want to
60
turn
minutes,
anything
and
away.
in the beginning, you're 60 days out on payment. By the time you have 9, a bunch of teams, it became a job.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it became not being able to help as many people. And once you start to get into helping people, that becomes your life.
Yes.
And Cindy, you know this. We've done this for years.
Right.
You've seen me do it. Where that's the joy of doing what I do, is to see someone who didn't think they could do something, or take a piece of information that you give them about breathing and how to change their breathing. I'll give you guys an example of a professional marathoner that I work with. When you give people something like that, especially an athlete who's their whole life been
Right,
you
they're
go to
already
Rutgers
good.
D1,
Yeah,
they're already really good.
So they're
and-
wondering,
and
those
they can
things
go-
are like,
they can go one level
I
higher.
need something that
10 levels
give me
higher.
something that I don't have.
Yeah.
But even one level higher is a plus when you're at that point.
So I'm going to give you an example of 1 level plus. Okay. 1 level plus is CJ Albertson. He's a marathon runner. He's an American marathon runner. He's 24 years old, 25 years old. He lives in California. Great guy. What's up, CJ? And I don't know how I met CJ. I met him through the internet. He caught on to one of my things that I did in my videos. Long story short, we get to be friendly. And so he's a marathoner, but he's not a Kenyan marathoner. So he's not 204,
Right.
203. He's running like 210, 211.
A
And
little behind.
the reason I kind of reached out, or we reached out for each other, he had some pretty unorthodox training methodology. So he would put like, when they're trying to incubate chickens, he would have these red lights all around his treadmill doing heat, trying to acclimate himself to heat. I was just impressed with the kid. So I call, so we hook up. I do a session. He's in California, and we're doing this via video, via FaceTime. And it's right away evident to me when I look at his breathing that he's paradoxically breathing. So when he breathes in, he's pulling his rib cage in, everything's going in, and it's the opposite of what should be happening.
Yeah.
So it was he couldn't train anymore. So there's no more miles to run. There's no more technique. This is it. What can you work on without really doing anything different than you're doing? Breathing.
Yeah.
So I taught CJ how to breathe properly, and he went from 211. Now he's 208, 207.
In the running world, that's huge. It's a
Oh
big
my gosh.
difference.
Huge.
Yes.
And it was like one of the first people that I saw in that type of result with, where you're watching the Boston Marathon and he's winning the Boston Marathon 2 years ago. Like he's like in front for 24 miles. He's winning the race. And you're like, oh my God, he's doing everything everything a college student wouldn't do.
Action.
Right.
Everything a college student like fought you over, this guy's begging for.
Yeah.
So, that's a different
incredible.
kind of help, but just as important in my practice, because I learned very, very quickly, breathing is the way to change your state of being quickly.
And this is where we wanted to go.
Yeah, to where I got sick.
We wanted to go to, so you're a certified breath coach. I know you trained through Patrick McEwen,
yeah.
and the Oxygen Advantage. And it's so funny because Jen and I just did workshops in Old Bridge yesterday, and I had 50 health and phys ed teachers, and I mentioned, so everybody heard of the Oxygen Advantage? Nobody's ever heard of it. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're teaching health and phys ed. How can you never have heard of this? But anyway, So here's what I want to know.
I think the industry, Cindy, is like that.
Ah.
I think one of the things that I'm unique about is not letting industry standard affect where I'm going to go or how I'm going to think, or my teaching, how I'm going to teach.
Well, the other thing is that, research, like I don't know everything. And that's always been your thing. So I researched
Right,
this.
I
I mean, you know how many
researched
times
this.
you've said that to me? I've researched this.
Yep.
And this is, and I, whether you're doing a private or you're teaching a class and you're like, I researched this and this is. So I want you to actually teach some kind of a breath movement for us.
Tell us what it is.
Tell us what it is. Because if nobody heard about the oxygen, I mean, when I
still
say
don't
to
know what
people,
it
how
is.
do you breathe? Do you breathe out of your nose? Do you breathe out of your mouth? What do you do? They're like looking at me like, I have
Like,
three
what would
heads.
you teach a beginner that
Yeah.
really doesn't know anything?
I do that all the time. So
A breath practice. Yeah.
So if I'm going to teach someone just the joy, the value of breath, I always say that's the value of your breathing. It's interesting how to just to say it out loud. You're right. Like you don't think about it like that if you're just regular people walking around. And I say regular people, like my parents are regular people. They're 80 something years old. They're wonderful people. And they live
But they don't act like they're
live-
80 years old.
No, but they live a yogic life, not even knowing
Yeah.
that's what they're doing. It's very difficult to make change, right? And this is
know
we
this.
were
Just talking about
That's why
that
we wrote
too.
a book about it.
yeah, it is. And when you start to practice mindfulness, it becomes clear that it's something you could do all the time, but difficult to do all the time, right? Practicing meditation or I don't say mindfulness is just meditation, but practicing that while you walk around, or like I was late coming here today. So that's unlike me altogether. So this is a new normal for me, having gotten sick in January. And I have to just accept that. So I called Cindy this morning and I said, hey, I'm running late.
Mm-hmm.
This is what my body offered today.
Mm-hmm.
You have to accept that and be okay with that. And I'm, ended up fine. I got here in plenty of time.
You
And
did.
that's just when you start to learn that. Having recently been sick, so I want to take you back before I give you a breath. I'm going to just talk for a second.
Okay, sure. That was the next question. So you're.
I think it all
fine.
works.
You're-
I think it all works.
It's all
It's a
working together.
conversation.
It's going to all work together. So I was minding my business in January, just going along, being probably the healthiest human being I've ever been in my life. The healthiest I've ever been in my own life, physically, mentally, and spiritually. I was in such a great place. My wife is really doing well. We got a beautiful kind of reprieve a couple years ago from her illness. She's now a memory care director in one of the facilities that I call on in my job and in my other life. And, for that to happen has just been such a blessing. I got sick. So after she gets sick, I got the flu in January, I never got the flu before in my whole life. I'm 57 years old. And I was in the best health of my life. I was 145 pounds, 144 pounds actually. I was about 6% body fat. Cindy will tell you I've, taught her some lessons and things like that. And I could do pretty much anything I wanted to do with my body.
Mm-hmm.
I could do hundreds of push-ups, hundreds of pull-ups. I could sit in a barrel full of ice for an hour and just do some things that I just never thought my body was going to be able to do.
Strong mind.
Yeah, it is.
As well.
Well, I say this to my students a lot, and I produce some really interesting shapes in my body, right? Cindy, I can do some stuff that's pretty out there. And I always tell my students, I'm really smart, I'm not really strong. I'm really smart, I'm not really strong, right? And yoga is a lot about being in the right place at the right time, putting pressure in the right spots at the right time, just like life, right? Like just pushing when you're supposed to push and not when you're supposed to not. So, my journey has been not linear, right? It's a little bit up, it's a little bit back, it's a little bit up, it's a little bit back. But
That's how life is.
That's for sure.
It's been a pretty consistent good though, like through my practice. And to be the picture of health, I think a little bit of your brain says, goes to yourself, I've never had the flu. I'm not going to be sick.
I'll be fine.
I'll be fine.
It's the flu.
So I got the flu, but I waited like a week to see.
But Jerry, before that,
seek help.
you had 2 surgeries.
I forgot about that actually. Yeah.
Yeah, but I remembered that, and I thought to myself, he had to be
in January, I had 2
yes.
kidney surgeries.
right.
Well, those are a little
That's-
major.
yeah, that's
So it's not just-
important
it
to
wasn't
the
just a
story.
flu.
Yeah. So
2 kidney surgeries.
I had a kidney stone that wouldn't come out. I had to get lithotripsy, which is like they blasted with an ultrasound. And then that splintered into some pretty severe shards, which ended up requiring surgery. I had a stent removed. I had a stent put in, stent removed. And
so that's a little major trauma
yes.
on the body.
Yeah, and I didn't really think about it, Jennifer.
I did when you got sick.
So did I. I have since thought about it too.
But you, being in perfect health, thinking, my body.
This is nothing.
And
This
I'm
is
going to tell you
nothing.
something else about C.J. Alverson and marathon training and functional breathing. So one of the things that drew me to McEwen, right, is he's talking about breathing in a very different way than we have learned.
Absolutely.
Okay, so when you were learning, who hasn't heard this? You're having a bad day and things are going to shit. And you're like, take a deep breath.
Take a breath.
And you're like,
No.
no. What you really want to do is take a big long exhale. So you're learning how the body feels. We talked about a beginner breath. I'm going to not give you a breath. I'm going to give you a life. I'm going to give you how should you breathe so that you're calm when you walk around, or if you find yourself in a position where you can't do something, this is going to help you. But I'm telling you about being sick because all of the things that I learned about yoga weren't technically available to me when I was sick. So I went into the hospital on January 22nd. I got sick really a week before that. Now, when I was learning the oxygen advantage, one of the things that drew me to McEwen was he was simulating high altitude training at sea level. So this is something that became wicked important to me because we live in New Jersey. I live down the beach in New Jersey, and there's not a lot of territory change. There's not a lot of change in elevation. And we're not getting the benefit of that, like less air as we breathe, just making the heart and lungs stronger. So I started to do, as an everyday practice, I started to do some what's called breath holding while I was exercising. And this was producing a result where chemically, I don't have enough time to get into it, but chemically my body was thinking, oh, wait a minute, I'm training in Colorado, I'm in the mountains. I can't breathe. So what has to happen there, and if I do it to you guys, you're doing exertion without air. It's super uncomfortable. I mean, like really uncomfortable. And I did this for like a year where I walked around my living room holding my breath and doing these deep, like learning how much you can hold before you pass out. I passed out many times. Like, I did a lot of this.
Testing your body.
Hell yeah. And when you go through all that, like, you test, you become very used to not having air. So that whole week, when I got sick between the 16th and the 22nd, I probably walked around with a pulse oxygenation of 80 and it's supposed to be like 100.
Yeah.
Right. So if I took all ours right now, we'd be 97,
Exactly.
98, 99, 100. And I walked around for a week at like 80.
Because you were used to it.
Yes. I'm very used to not having oxygen. So by the time I got sick enough that I went to the doctor's office and they were like, okay, we're going to just send you right into the
ICU.
Yeah. Well, they sent me to urgent care because they didn't have the ability to do a chest x-ray where I was. So I went to urgent care and they did the chest x-ray and they're like, okay, you need to go to the hospital right now. Apparently my lungs were 80% full of fluid at that point. And the minute I went in on the 22nd, I was immediately put into the ICU because I was like really in bad shape and I was septic. So as soon as I got there, my systems were shutting down. Yeah. They flood me with antibiotics and they flood me with steroids. And I'm now stuck in the ICU for 50 days as a nightmare. As it went from the flu, I got a pneumonia, bacterial pneumonia turned into viral pneumonia. I had double pneumonia and you can't breathe at all. And for 51 or 52 days, I was in intensive care. My resting heart rate, as I sit here today, is 41. My resting heart rate in the hospital was 120. So for a month and a half, my heart beat at 120 beats per minute.
Trying to keep you alive.
Trying to keep me alive.
Yep.
I went from, in the hospital, but I went from weighing 144, 45. I went in, maybe 6 or 7% body fat. When I left the hospital, I weighed 113 pounds. In order to save my life, they used a machine called a BiPAP machine. They never had to intubate me. And this is something I was trying to avoid a lot. I was trying to avoid being intubated. Not that you can do anything about that. You can
Right.
only your body can either make it or not make it. And I made it. I never had to get intubated, but it was, you know, we talked about this in the beginning of the podcast. Yolandi and I, we lived our lives by a principle called be kind all the time. That's what came to us when we first started yoga.
Yeah.
It was given to me, it came like from the universe. It just came into my brain. Be kind all the time. And a couple of years ago, I don't know how it happened, but it became popular to do cold plunging.
Mm-hmm.
I always try to be like 3 steps
the
ahead of
thing
where
now.
Wim Hof,
Right.
Wim Hof.
Yeah, I was
and,
Wim Hofing at the time.
It's the thing now.
And I don't know why I needed a challenge. So I got a barrel full of ice and I decided I was going to do every day for a year how many minutes I could stay in the barrel. In the beginning, it was a minute. By the time I was finished, it was 35, 40 minutes. I was trying to break a record. A world record was an hour at the time.
Of course you were.
While I was trying to break the record, I got myself hypothermia. I went to the hospital. But long story short, somebody broke the record at 4 hours. So I stopped. I was like, this is too, yeah, I'm not going to sit here for 4 hours. It's stupid. It's too much.
Yeah.
But what do you learn about yourself? You learn to do hard things.
Yeah,
And I love that you
exactly.
said
Right.
that. That's now our thing. So yeah, you have to be kind, but you got to get up every day and you got to do hard things.
Yes.
Right. And that's the attitude I took in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
I have 6 children. I have a beautiful wife, and there's no chance this is taking me away from that, but it wanted to. And I faced death like 3 or 4 times in the hospital. It came for me. And I told it no.
But you did say that.
Yeah.
Even when I talked to you, you were like,
Yeah.
I'm not dying here.
Yeah.
No.
And
getting
you know,
out
I'll
of
be
here.
honest.
It wanted- like, I was
when
given the
I
chance to
saw him
pass.
at his worst in the ICU,
Mhm.
and he's like pointing to look at my oxygen levels, look at my heart rate, and you know, it was just so shocking. And one of the things that you said to me was, I can't do what I did.
This is what I'm getting at.
I
This is what I'm getting
can't
at.
do
So
my
it got
breath
taken
work.
away.
It
Do
got
my breath.
taken away.
Yes. Yes.
How, and you know,
It's still there, Cindy.
it
it's
is
so,
still there.
It's so
Of
who I
course it
am
is. Yes.
that
Well, it's what saved you.
when I went into the hospital, it did. And
Mhm.
I was told by 4 or 5 different doctors, I shouldn't be alive.
Mhm.
Right.
Like, I just shouldn't. And I want to say, you know, you look at life and you say, well, you trained for years to help your wife, right? And it's the fact is, I probably wasn't training all those years to help my wife. It looked like that on
You
the
were
outside.
training to
Who
save
knew?
your
Trying to
life.
save your life.
This was common.
Yeah.
And the message was, you know, my wife's message of hope and courage and overcoming is amazing. And she is one of the brightest lights in the space, the wellness space. But she never did this.
Mm-mm.
You know, and I was forced to do something that is very different than that. And, you know, when you're a yogi of the level that I'm at, and it permeates every part of your existence, right? It permeates how I parent my children. It permeates how I teach my students. Everything in my life is basically based on this system that I've set up for myself. And I couldn't have been in a position where I needed it more than where I was,
Mhm.
right? So let's take movement right away out. You can't move.
You can't move.
There's an alarm on the bed. You
can't
get
even
up,
get out of the
Mask
bed.
on,
you have a
couldn't go
mask
anywhere.
tethering
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
You cannot do anything. So movement's out.
And you're so weak.
Yes.
You were so weak.
Cindy.
And you could barely talk. But I will say that Jerry said to me, and you may not remember this, I'm not gonna die here.
I used, you know, words I used to myself, Cindy, over and over, and it's now my 3rd. So be kind all the time, for sure, and you have to, right? You have to do hard things. Everybody does,
Mm-hmm. They
and
don't
then
want to, but
and then
they
you have to decide. And I decided this in the hospital, and it's a decision you make. I am, and these are the words I use. I'm unbreakable. I'm unbreakable. Okay, so if you take movement away, I'm going to breathing.
Mhm.
Guess what?
They
Took
took
that
that
away
away
too.
too.
And now, I feel so blessed. I don't know, Cindy, if you put me onto this guy, or I came on and put you onto him, but there's a guy teaching mindfulness
Sam
named
Harris.
Sam Harris,
Sam
and he
Harris.
has, it's not an advertisement for his app or anything like
Mhm.
that, but
Waking up.
when I had learned meditation through the yoga field, you learn, listen, meditation is like one of the things I teach meditation often, and I think it's so funny. I teach it like this. I say to people, so I've studied meditation from many different cultures in this world. I started with a Buddhist meditation, Zen meditation,
Mhm.
eyes open, eyes open.
Mm-hmm.
I start with yoga, eyes closed. Blah, blah. So there's no good answer to should you open your eyes or should you close your eyes, right?
Whatever you
So-
can
Whatever you can do.
Well,
Yep.
that led me to, there's no right answer to this,
Right.
right? There's no one way to the answer to the problem. There's a bunch of different ways that you can meditate. Mantra meditation, for example, and I went on a retreat for weeks and I learned a mantra, and that's the meditation I was doing prior to learning mindfulness.
Yeah.
Now, I've been a mindfulness practitioner meditation-wise for probably 2 years now, or 2.5 years. And you can't, when you're as sick as I was, your mantra, you can't do a mantra.
Just keep
You
going.
can't
You can't
eat, you
remember.
can't do anything.
No.
So you have to practice. The only thing that was available to me at the first 3 or 4 weeks in the hospital was mindfulness and this type of meditation where I'm not saying a word over and over again. I am simply coming into a space and observing.
Just to be.
So when I went into the hospital, I decided right away that it was an opportunity. And mind you, I didn't know I was going to be in there for 2 months, 2.5 months.
Right.
It was an opportunity not to touch my phone and to not use social media and not watch television. So I decided to use it as a detox when I got sick.
Mm-hmm.
So I went in and I immediately put my phone away and didn't have them turn the TV on. So for the first 40 days, it was me,
Yes.
the room, which is the ICU, and it's bright as
Yes.
could be.
Fluorescent
People
lighting,
touching you all
everyone's
the
coming
time.
It's
in.
horrible.
Yeah, awful.
About 4 weeks
Awful.
into it, I got
Horrible.
something called ICU delirium.
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that.
Yeah. Well,
Where
I do
I
now.
remember.
I was
remember.
hallucinating all day.
Yeah.
People were coming off the walls, and I was making phone calls. I'm like, babe, I'm using my phone. I'm calling. She took my phone away. My wife. She's like, okay, we don't need to have the phone. But
Mhm.
the things that you overcome just in that little
Yep.
tiny world that you're living in, you become goal oriented. Okay, so today I'm going to try to eat. You know, like the things that you
Somehow.
take for take for granted, living, breathing. You know how many showers I took in 68 days in hospital? 2 or 3.
Yeah.
You're like,
You can't get out of bed.
there's no dignity in it.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah,
dignity.
they take everything away.
But when you get down to the nitty gritty of like live or die, you don't care.
Mhm.
You don't care, and I didn't care. I was like a wild animal to be better. Like there was no way I was gonna let myself get taken. You were gonna have to take me. They were gonna have to take me, and they tried. A couple times I went to sleep at night, I thought, and just got called. Like it's time to go, and I just wouldn't go. I couldn't let myself go down that path. As hard as it was,
Mhm.
and as difficult as it is to lose everything, I didn't. At the end of the day, I didn't lose anything.
well, you
I really
didn't
didn't lose anything.
But
You
you,
weren't
you know,
I'm
with it,
here.
you weren't ready. And you know what it reminds me of is almost like the people that have survived the worst things,
Yep.
concentration camps, losing a child, and
Terrible.
it's here.
It's funny you bring that up.
And that's-
Concentration camp in particular.
Yes.
I had a visitor to my house, and you know her yesterday.
Yeah.
She was over, one of our yogi friends that I've taught for many years, and she came over and she goes, "You're one of those crazy people that would have survived the concentration camp."
Well,
and she's like, "I'm like, yeah, I probably would have."
Well, honestly, when I
Because your
looked at
mind
you,
is
it just
strong.
reminded me
Yes.
of that, and it
Yes.
reminded me of people, of the stories that
Yes.
I've read of people. It was their
It's your
mind. They were
Yeah.
just like, "You can't
Can't
take
take
my
what's in
mind.
my
You can take
mind."
everything else.
Mhm.
You can't take my mind."
And then this is what happens. So eventually, right, as I sit there, I get to a point where I can, in fact, the first thing I could affect post meditation, because you guys, you know, Cindy, as you learn meditation, breathing's a huge part of it, right? So I was able within the first, let's say 6 weeks, to transition from just meditation to meditation and breathing. That's when I knew everything was going to be.
When you can get your
Okay.
breath back, you
Yeah.
knew you were going to.
Yeah.
You knew.
But
you
here's
were
the
All right.
thing, guys, you can't get your breath back. Have you ever run as fast as you can, right? I probably haven't felt this in many years, and been utterly 100% breathless.
Right.
That's the best I
Never did
felt.
best.
That's the best I felt during that time. So it's nuts. So the first thing you learn, and I knew this from being a functional breathing coach, let's stretch out the exhales. Let's stretch out the longer I can make my exhale, and this is the way the body works. As we inhale, the whole time I'm pulling air in, my heart rate's going up. Okay, and the
'Cause
whole
that's
time
what happens.
the whole time I'm breathing out, my heart rate's going down.
It's your
Now,
relaxation.
I tell people, try to breathe through your nose. Okay, it's much easier to draw air into the lungs if you use the nose as opposed to the mouth. Not impossible to use the mouth. And so you guys understand this. I'm in the hospital. You have the tubes up your nose, and they're blowing forced air. They're forcing air up your nose, and it's the damage in your sinus. It's just ridiculous. There's blood clots coming out all over. So guess what? It's not perfect. No. So the first time I'm trying to get air into that place in my lungs, you're breathing through your mouth, buddy. I got news for you. But all I started to do was stretch exhales, right? So if we do this right now for your listeners, and this is just something I learned, I can reduce pain and I can reduce anxiety very simply by changing breath, right? And I needed this for my wife. So we'd go to the hospital and she'd get a blockage in her intestines on a Friday night, invariably. We'd run to the hospital. And you guys been to the hospital. When you get there, they don't just like, oh, Jerry's here, we're going to give him medicine. No,
sit down and wait.
There's 700 people there, right? Yeah. So you're waiting 4 hours. So I would watch my wife wreathing around on the floor in pain. And I'm like, not acceptable. So I learned how to teach her to breathe in a certain way. It's going to reduce your pain, reduce your anxiety. And we can wait 4 or 5 hours pretty simply if we breathe like this. So as soon as I could do it, I started to breathe in 1, 2, and I tried to breathe out 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Sometimes it was 1.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Big breath in. You start to choke.
Longer than you can breathe in.
Yeah. So for anyone that's really struggling, like, I was late to come here. So guess what I did for the 10 minutes that I was like getting towards
were breathing.
You? I started to increase the length of my exhale. So when I walked in here, I wasn't a nut. And I was able to talk to you guys, So inhale 2 or 3, exhale 3, 4. And what happened to me was, as days went by, the inhale came to 2, it came to 3, it got to 4. And then my exhale got to 6 or 7 or 8. And once I was able to breathe out like that, it made the breathing in easier. It calmed it. McEwen talks about breathing less. You know why? Because we take in more, we allow the body to become more CO2 tolerant. Right. And so my body became very CO2 tolerant. And now I am probably the world's most CO2 tolerant human. I say that I'm not even joking. I probably am. I can live a really long time.
I don't think a lot of people even know what that is. So we have a minute.
Come back for a part 2.
We do. So normally we ask final questions. I don't think we have the time, but I do want to say thank you so much for coming on.
We know
I think your story is
it was a lot.
And I think that everybody here can see someone who appreciates life.
Yes.
And I think that's the biggest. I was going to ask you for your takeaway, but I'm going to give it today. Yeah. And the takeaway is that this is a person who almost lost life, but throughout just kept fighting and fighting and still recognizes there's so much to live and much to give.
Can I say something about that?
Yes, you can.
Because it's super, I think what you said is super important about when I'm nobody special. I'm really not. I was given special circumstances. This is what happened. We're all capable of this. It's inside all of us. I hate the fact that I had to be tested to find that out, but I found it out. And I teach to all my students. I've taught you guys the same thing that I'm saying now, and you've taught me. We all teach each other the same thing. And it's never going to get different than that. It's not. It's how do we accept it? How do we move forward from it? That's going to be the demarcation of how we lived our lives, right? And what you guys said in the beginning, Jennifer, this is a podcast about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. The reason I said it, I'm just ordinary.
We all are.
And I learned that
doing
the hard
amazing
way. We're just normal
things.
people.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Everybody can do hard things.
Everybody can do it.
Just like
I'm nobody different. That's my point.
Right. Everybody can do hard things.
So
Jen, you want to finish up?
Yes. So we're out of time, so we'll have to come back for a part 2. But thank you so much for joining us, and we will be back next time. And Cindy always has her final remarks.
Right. And the final remark is, our Women of Wellness, our motto is do hard things and remember to pause, breathe, and then respond.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jerry.
Good way to live.